A Tennessee school board has banned the critically acclaimed graphic novel Mouse. One school board member commenting on the book saying, quote, "It shows people hanging, it shows them killing kids. Why does the educational system promote this kind of stuff? It is not wise or healthy." What do you worry is on the horizon if there is a part of this country that cannot be learning about the Holocaust in the way it happened?
Well, I think it's already started happening. Like I said, the dog whistles abound. The dog whistles abound. You know, I think there was a moment in there where I thought Jews were honorary white people, where I thought Jews were honorary white people. But it seems that after coming against critical race theory as the accusation against books that deal with our history, never facing up to studying the genocide of Indians, never facing up to studying the genocide of Indians, never facing up to studying the genocide of Indians.
This is WJTV News Channel 12 at 6.
Concentration camps. People mostly associate the term with Nazi Germany, but historians say it's true. They also existed in America. It's true. They also existed in America. During the Civil War, authorities in Natchez, Mississippi forced tens of thousands of freed slaves into camps. Authorities in Natchez, Mississippi forced tens of thousands of freed slaves into camps, built in what's known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Jacob Kittelstadt explores this forgotten history this Mystery Monday.
Untouched fruit falls to the ground near the banks of the Mississippi River.
They talk about there's the most beautiful wild peach groves down in the Punch Bowl.
And researcher Paula Westbrook says, like a peach, the area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl has a pit, a mass grave from the 1860s. Historians estimate that in 1 year, up to 20,000 freed slaves died in contraband camps below these bluffs. In 1 year, up to 20,000 died in contraband camps below these bluffs.
When the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight.
So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out. Which they walled off and wouldn't let them out. Which they walled off, walled off, walled off.
Don Estes is the former director of the Natchez City Cemetery.
I just put my own tombstone right there. You see Estes?
Learning history's been his life. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor.
Straight down right here.
While women and children were all but left to die in the 3 Punch Bowl prisons.
Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. Thousands and thousands died. They were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go home, and I'll go home, and I'll go home, back to the plantation, anywhere but there. But they wouldn't let them out.
The Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said, bury them where they drop.
And I'd really like to show you more of this terrain, but
It's just too thick with greenery. These bluffs are also straight down, so not only is it dangerous to navigate, it's still very mysterious back there.
It's a bed of alligators and snakes. It would take Indiana Jones to get back in there at this point.
Then you come on up washing away bluffs and at the Devil's Punch Bowl that has so many people that no one knows how they got killed or when. That no one knows how they got killed or when. And they're still down there wasted.
And even to this day, they talk about wild peach trees that come up down there. But no one in Natchez will eat them because they know what the fertilizer was.
Exploring the unexplained on Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittelstead, WJTV News Channel 12.
And historians say even now people might discover old skeletal remains after flooding on the Mississippi. But being on the Natchez Trace, sometimes it's difficult to tell which century those bones are from. Which century those bones are from.
Welcome to the Aboriginal Channel. On this episode, we're going to learn that the genocide of the American Indian has never stopped. So right here, we got the definition of the word dog whistle. It says a subtle aim political message which is intended for and can only be understood by a particular group. When we go down here and read another definition for the word, right here it says a choice of words, coded communication, or other symbolic aspect of self-presentation that is superficially unobjectionable or neutral but conveys a secondary message aimed at those who affiliate with a controversial group or fringe ideology, usually signaling one's own affinity for such beliefs. Understand that last part. Usually signaling one's own affinity for such beliefs. So when the man said he believes that the Jews supposed to have been white people, he means he's dog whistling to the other white people saying, why are you taking my book out of the schools, based upon this critical race theory that was supposed to be for only a certain people. But the certain people, he said in the next sentence, I duplicated and slowed down so you'll understand the dog whistles he's talking about. He said he never gave a study to the genocide of the Indians. That was basically a threat. Like Donald Trump told the people when he wanted to get his casino off the ground, he was telling them they don't look like Indians. That was a dog whistle and only meant to be understood by a certain people. So right here, we have a young man right here. It says Miami high school football player dies in police custody after car chase. It says family of Christopher Walls, 16, is demanding justice. Says just a week after 16-year-old Christopher Walls died in police custody after a car chase that led to a crash. His family and friends are demanding answers and justice. Says reports that according to the Miami-Dade police, Walls allegedly carjacked a driver in Broward County and led officers on a chase that went into Miami-Dade. Eventually, authorities say the teen lost control of the vehicle and crashed into a fence. He was then taken into custody by Hollywood, Florida police, but became unconscious a short time later. Walls was pronounced dead at Hialeah Hospital after being transported there. Down here it says a witness who recorded a video of the incident says it shows police officers beating up Walls after he crashed. You could see them just kicking him in the head, kicking him in the side, kicking him everywhere, and it was just total shock, the witness told WPLG. The officers involved in the incident have reportedly been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Now, the last name Walls means a topographic name for someone who lived by a stone-built wall.
So they decided to build an encampment for him at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off, which they walled off, walled off, walled off.
But let's go look at some stuff over here. So in the first clip I showed a Jew whose book about his Holocaust history is being taken out of the schools, and he happened to mention the genocide of the American Indian. So the genocide that he's talking about, part of it is what happened in Natchez at the Devil's Punch Bowl, which is the next clip I showed. They say thousands died down in the camps, and they said they were walled off. But I'm saying that the people already had a wall there. So they said it happened during the Civil War. If you look at the Civil War's battles map, Natchez is located right down here on the water. in Adams County. Basically right here, right up against this river right here, Mississippi River. And then the villages looked somewhat like this. I'm not saying that this is the wall they had. They had brick walls and tall walls. But they saying that the mounds in the villages would be, or the camps would be inside with the flanks to the river right up here. So if we look at a battles map, we'll see that Natchez was surrounded by Civil War battles. All these little colors on this map is where Civil War battles took place at. So it could be that during the Civil War, when things were going on around these places, people went into Natchez behind the walls that were there, and then they were basically slaughtered or murdered. They said they wouldn't let them out, so they starved to death, but that's hard to believe. So I looked up what weapons were being used during the Civil War, and they had what was called the hot air balloons. It said other newfangled weapons took to the air. For example, Union spies floated above Confederate encampments and battle lines in hydrogen-filled passenger balloons, sending reconnaissance information back to their commanders via telegraph. So they had balloons and they had grenades. Civil War was about fighting from a distance. Up here it says, it's from history.com, it's right here, it says Civil War technology. It says before the Civil War, infantry soldiers typically carried muskets that held just one ball at a time. The range of these muskets was about 250 yards. However, a soldier trying to aim and shoot with any accuracy would have to stand much closer to his target, since the weapon's effective range was only about 80 yards. Therefore, armies typically fought battles at a relatively close range. So it's saying before the Civil War, battles were fought at a relatively close range. And then during the Civil War, they came up with all this different technology to fight from a distance. Now, why would they need to fight the war from a distance and they fought all their other wars at close range? So right here, I'm going to be reading from the book, The History of Alabama and Incidentally of Georgia and Mississippi from the Earliest Period by Albert James Pickett. Now, I'm basically going to give some descriptions of what the American Indians looked like. So right here, we're talking about the Black Warrior, which was Chief Tuscaloosa from Alabama. It says Tuscaloosa was 40 years of age, of great stature, with immense limbs. He was spare around the waist, and his whole form was admirably proportioned. His countenance was handsome, but grave and severe. He was lord of many territories and much people, and was feared by his neighbors and subjects. So basically down here, he met up with the governor. It says right here that an officer was sent amongst the horses to find one large enough to sustain the giant Indian. A large pack horse, the property of the governor, was selected. Appareled in a rich suit of scarlet and a cap of the same given to him by De Soto, the chieftain, who was a head taller than any of his attendants, mounted upon his horse with his feet nearly trailing on the ground. So that's how tall Indians were in Alabama. So let's go over to the Osage Indians. It says right here that the Osage Indians were, and many still are, among the tallest indigenous people. It says physically, the Osage were the finest specimens of Western Indians, tall, erect, and dignified. The average height of the men was over 6 feet. Down here it says they were good looking, graceful, and quick, standing tall at heights of 6 to 7 feet. So the Indians in Arkansas were 6 to 7 feet. They had a chief of the Quapaws right around the Little Rock area that was called Tall Chief. I think he was about 6'2". Right down here it says one Osage chief was 7 feet tall and weighed 300 pounds. Right here, the Timucua Indians, the ones right there in Florida. It says 7 foot tall Timucuan Indian chief at the Fountain of Youth Park in St. Augustine. It says the Timucua Indians were extremely tall tribe. So you got got tall Indians in Alabama, tall Indians in Arkansas, tall Indians in Florida, and then the tallest woman in America in the 1800s was this woman right here. Her name was Ella Williams, the world's tallest woman in the late 1800s. Ella Williams was in the late 1800s described as an extraordinary woman who stood over 8 feet in height and could easily support the weight of a man on her outstretched arm. Born in South Carolina in the U.S. in 1865, but it says Ella Williams grew up to become an international celebrity and traveled all over the world as the tallest woman in the world. Now, right here, I just asked the internet, were Native Americans the tallest people in the world in the 1800s? It said yes. 1800s Native Americans were the tallest in the world. Recently discovered data has revealed a surprising fact. Native Americans, especially equestrian plains tribes, were the tallest people in the world. And that is why they would have to find ways to fight at a distance. In a previous video, when I talked about the Timbakua's ability with the bow and arrow, it said that they were able to accurately hit their target at 200 paces, which is about 200 yards. But it said that the soldiers for the colonizers were only accurate with a musket at 80 yards. So it didn't add up. They needed to find ways to kill from a distance. Through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then what's